welcome to the Noon Hour panel series. This panel is a discussion on desirability and preferences. My name is Francesca Ekwuyasi, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm a settler here in Mi'kma'ki from Lagos, Nigeria. And in naming my position as a settler, I believe I have a responsibility to be in solidarity with Indigenous people. And some ways that solidarity looks like for me is learning about the treaties and redistributing whatever wealth comes my way to Indigenous communities. Yeah. So I'm really excited to be here in conversation with, I'm going to read their bios now, with Phạm. Phạm, their pronouns are they, she, he, or Chen. Tam is also known as Tam, and they are a Gen 1.5 Vietnamese non-binary settler. Tam uses both Westernized pronouns, so they, she, or he, and Vietnamese pronouns, Chan. Throughout their life, they were able to connect with many queer and trans Asian Pacific Islander folks who helped them come to terms with both their non-binary and Vietnamese identities. They're currently a grad student at Dalhousie University, where they research cool stuff about proteins. They also notice an underrepresentation of queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color folks in their field, which has led them to working on centering and uplifting BIPOC voices into leadership positions and building solidarity with BIPOC folks. In their free time, they read light novels, different cultural forms of comics, watch horror movies, and care for their baby plants. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We're also going to be in conversation with Liane. Liane's pronouns are she and her, as she is a queer, bisexual, Palestinian Jordanian from Amman, Jordan. She is the founder of Queer Arabs of Halifax and is currently the QT BIPOC committee lead for Halifax Pride. Yeah. So thank you both of you for being here in conversation with me.
You are welcome.
I'm nervous.
Don't be.
I didn't think I would be because we're in conversation a lot. And
Yeah.
It's nice to meet you, and I didn't think I would be, but I'm a bit nervous. Mostly because I love to have the conversation about desirability and preferences. And I understand these things to be like deeply entrenched, as everything is, in systems of oppression, of power, marginalization. And like these systems that Bell Hooks refers to as, I'm going to read the Bell Hooks quote, refers to as imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. And Laverne Cox actually expanded that to be a cisnormative, heteronormative, imperialist, white supremacist patriarchy. So I believe that what we understand to be our own personal preferences and desires in terms of like friendship, dating, and even community is heavily informed by ableism, racism, fatphobia, classism, transphobia, and transmisogyny. And you know, those words mean things. We use them really casually now. I think they've made their way into mainstream language, which is great, but they also mean very specific things. And I think, our preferences and desires or the politics of our desires are completely informed by that. And unless we're doing basically anti-oppressive internal work, we're going to continue to be both impacted by and complicit in, in harm because everyone deserves community. So with that long spiel, I'll ask my first question. I would love to hear from both of you about when, why, and how you started to unpack your own desires and preferences, and what things, or whatever happened in your life to inform that.
I can start first.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Tam. So just to answer the questions, as someone grew up in a traditional like Vietnamese household and being born in a female body, sex and desirability preferences generally is kind of like a difficult topic to bring up in general. It may stretch it a little bit, even though my family is considered very open-minded. it's not often being brought up in my family. Actually, even for some, it could be a taboo. Like, it's like, oh, you don't talk about it, and you figure it out on your own. So, so it was, I think, to explore. So I never really get to explore my own kind of like identities and my desire, my preferences, not until I got into university and actually moved out and have that opportunity to do it without my parents' supervision, I guess. And also like, I started to explore all of that when I enter into a serious relationship, which is like something that you should not do. Like, please don't do that, because like, totally explore yourself before, and knowing your preferences, your I guess like your kinks and all the stuff before you actually enter yourself in a relationship. Because I think like, if you're going into a relationship and not knowing what you want from your partner, it's really difficult like to set that as like I guess like a criteria or even standards for yourself when you're coming in. But I think the taboo and forbidden topic has made it really difficult for me to develop my desire and my preferences. And not only that, like, if you think, like, I'm also demisexual, and, you know, so it's being hard to, it's actually making it harder, because now I can only have these, like, I guess, like, explore these preferences when I have a good connection, like emotional connection with someone. So it's like added more to that layer of my exploration of this, of my preferences, I guess. And I don't know if it's the same thing in other like API community, Asian Pacific Islander community, but especially for Southeast Asian community, in Vietnamese community, you tend to internalize a lot of fat phobic and a lot of like colorist narratives. So, so whenever I discuss these issues with a lot of femme folks out there, it's fat phobia and colorism are like the two most recurring themes that I ever, like, I always encounter conversation where folks either hear things such that like, oh, you're, like, this is come up a little bit triggering, but like, oh, you're too dark, try using this inserted skin bleaching products. Like, it's quite concerning, but like, if you think about it, skin bleaching products is actually a billionaire industry. So why is it so able to make so much money? And it's because of these type of narratives. Or even you can hear things like, oh, you're too fat, try exercising more, eating healthier. Like, it's your own fault that you are, like, that your body is like the way it is. So you tend to just internalize a lot of these, and it has like, I think in a way, it definitely damaged my self-esteem and also my insecurity when I'm back out there and trying to jump into like the dating scene. because I kind of just felt like, oh, it's my fault that I'm not like up to the standard. I'm not like this. So it's definitely like make it even harder for me to resolve all these like internalized like conflicts to in myself when I go out there. Yeah.
May I say something?
Yeah.
I really appreciate like how vulnerable you're being, and it just occurred to me like when we internalize like fat phobia or like colorist racist things, yes, like sure we do have a personal responsibility to unlearn that, and maybe we'll be more free. But like, unless larger systems, unless skin bleaching is not a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the workouts or like weight loss industry isn't like massively profitable, and everyone is not in agreement that if you're dark and fat, we hate it, you know?
Yeah.
Unless that changes, we can do all the work, but it takes more than that, you know?
Yeah, it
But
does.
yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you. Like that's why it's like not. I felt like it's folks keep saying, oh, it's your old problem. You need to resolve that issue, but like, it's actually a systemic issue.
It is.
How are you gonna blame folks when they internalize so much of this? Because like, why are you shifting the blame to the individual that internalize these things, when you should be shifting your blame to the system, like the people that capitalize on these type industry or like these type narratives, right? So it definitely took, I think, a long time for me to sort of unpack some of these like traumas, I guess, like not until late 20s, which is like a very reoccurring theme again. Like this is not a reoccurring theme when I talk to like a lot of QT5 folks. It's like this phenomenon of like delayed adolescence, where like they don't get to experience their true puberty or like I guess like adolescent or growing stage, the moment they hit their like 25 or like 30 later on in their life.
Yeah.
So, so when I realized that it's like a problematic narrative, and when folks say these things to me, I started to having to like think about it and say, hey, if they're saying this to me, it's like a systemic thing, and also they're projecting some of that like insecurities onto me. So it has nothing wrong to do with me, and whether my size, my skin color, my ethnicity, it has nothing to do with you, like or like the person that being projected upon. So you just have to like think about that in that sense to be able to unpack some of that like traumas, I guess.
Everything about this, I feel like I also come from like a family that is like liberal, like middle class, like, you know, educated abroad all the time. And like they're very Eurocentric. It's mind-boggling for like, it's like typical Middle Eastern family, like when like, you know, they're like, oh yeah, like let's look at Europe, let's look at like North America and like how they're like, so like I am from comparing to all of my cousins, I am like the largest one in size. So I've been like, ever since puberty hit, like I've been like attacked like by my family members. You need to lose weight. Look at you, you're so fat. You're like, you know, why is your hair curly? Your hair should be like straight. And like, it's just like these all nitpicky things, because like all they think about is like, oh, the European standard, which is like fucked, right?
But that's by design.
It's by design.
That's like what imperialism does. Like even culturally, there's this hegemony where we have to assimilate to be desirable.
Yeah.
And you know, like your family telling you that, I don't know, of course I'm not in your family, but I know that when my family tells me those things, I hate it, but I know that it's because they want me to have an easier time.
100%.
You know?
Yeah. Like looking at my cousins who are all, like, the majority of like the women married like white men, except for one who married like a Hawaiian guy who is like of Asian descent. And like my grandmother, my fucking racist grandmother, was like not happy that she married someone who is like East Asian or like a Pacific Islander. And like, but she loves the Italian one because, you know, wine and shit. But like as soon as like she found out like my cousin's husband, Jonas, like is a patisserie chef, she's like, okay, I like you now because you make sweets. Like, you know, it's still a little fucked. It's frustrating. It's just like, it makes me feel like I'm also like, I don't know what my desires are. Like when I was growing up, it's just like, I didn't know where I fit in. And then coming to Canada and to Jabuktuk here, I felt like I had to abandon a part of my culture in order to fit in with somebody else's, right? It's just like, and we're talking about early to mid 2000s, like, just like not like pretending to be Arab or like, you know, going more like into like white culture is like super fucked in order to like get along and like meet new queer friends. Like as soon as I figured out my sexuality and like who my desires are, it was very hard, like, because like there wasn't a lot of folks that looked like me. Like you go and it's like, and like nobody was like talking to me either. So it's just like, I felt like that weirdo who's just like wanting to be loved, and I'm like, hey, and like, you know, go on dates and like just be abandoned like after the first date, just because I like, it must be me, and like, how do I change that? And like you said, like earlier, like late 20s is like your epiphany. It's just like for, I don't know, it's just like for me, it's like, this is not what I want. Like, I feel like there's something missing, and I looked around, it's just like, I don't know. Like I looked at like the friends that I had also, like I was the token brown queer person in like a sea of like straight white people who are all connected to one another, like they're all couples, and I'm like, it just felt gross. Yeah, it just felt awful to me. So
I've heard from other racialized queer people about how, you know, they felt like in order to be queer, they had to sort of abandon their like cultural background
Yeah.
in order to be accepted in queerness.
Yeah.
Or because, you know, I don't know why, but it seems like even my experience of queerness here is predominantly white. And so, yeah, I've heard that before from
Yeah.
other people. I've felt that as well.
yeah, it's
And
like, which side do you pick? Like,
Yeah.
also like a lot of folks from my background, like are like a lot of my friends now are like queer Muslims, and it's like a lot of them, even me at one point, I had to abandon like my faith or like my spirituality or like my spiritual identity in order to fit in, and it's just like I still like sometimes feel incomplete because
Yeah.
of that. Yeah.
It makes me think like, you know, because my coming into queerness and learning about it, I definitely was, you know, I came out late in life. What you said about the delayed adolescence, I was like, yeah, totally. Like, you know, my late 20s, I was like, I want to date, you know?
Yeah.
But I lost my train of thought.
No worries.
We're on the same path, though.
It will come back.
Yeah.
It will come back.
Yeah.
And like I totally resonated that like when I first discovered explore my queerness, I felt like I need to abandon my Vietnamese identity because like 10, 15 years ago there weren't even vocabs to even like explaining queerness,
Yeah.
my language.
Same.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to explain it to my parents, so I just decided not to even talk about it,
Yeah.
and just hang out in predominantly white queer space.
Yeah.
Like now, thanks to Gen Z, like folks are really creative. They were able to come up with put together
The youth.
pronouns.
The youth, thank you
Yeah.
to the youth.
Thanks to, I really have to thank, like this is, I'm not even joking. I have to really thank Gen Zs because folks came up with non-binary pronouns and pronouns in Vietnamese language that I can use for myself. And I was so grateful when I discovered my Vietnamese pronoun like a year and a half ago. And it's all thanks to Twitter and TikTok.
Honestly, thanks to
Yeah.
the internet, like
Yeah.
it connected a lot of us, like
Yeah.
to all these communities that I didn't know existed.
Yeah. So now I was able to reconcile some of that like Vietnamese identity and my non-binary. But before that, it was so hard. You have to sort of abandon it.
I remembered what I was trying to say.
Okay.
And it's connected about abandoning. But yeah, I came into queerness definitely naive and definitely very optimistic. I was like, oh yeah, queer people, historically have been marginalized. Like first Pride was a riot led by like racialized trans women. For sure, this is a safe place. We can all meet together here and be held in equity and joy and love. No, the same like power dynamics and inequities that exist in the larger world also exist here, and that was like unfortunately shocking to me. And yeah, like fatphobia in the queer community, overwhelming, super activating for people who have struggled with eating disorders, like just not a fun time. Racism, misogyny, like I really was, I'm not shocked anymore, but back then I was like, what? It's just the same as with straight people.
Damn it.
Why isn't it any different? But that's why I kind of opened with like, we have the same work to do here, in terms of like unlearning bullshit. That's actually really, because like we can talk about dating, sure it's about dating, but it's also about friendships.
It is
It's
definitely.
about who chooses you and who invites you in and who gives you opportunities to work with them, to create with them. Yeah, and that, like when you were saying like going on dates and just being like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Damn, like that is such ouch, like I felt that so deeply, and I know so many people across the spectrum who are like,
Yeah.
it's me, I need to change this.
Yeah. And like it's like at one point I felt like I'm like in my like because I identify as a femme. Like I'm more of a sporty one, like I'm more like, you know, let's go hiking kind of femme, like whatever. But like I felt like my identity like wasn't accepted too as a femme person. And it was just really weird. I'm like, do I go butch? Like, I'm not comfortable in that, like, you know, aesthetic at all. Honestly, the people who saved my life are like these groups of BIPOC femmes that like came into my life in my like 30s, like my early 30s, and I don't know where I'd be without them. Like, they have taught me how to unpack a lot of shit. But like my identity was as a femme was like, this is home. Like, these are the people I was like, yeah, this community.
Yeah. It makes me think of like I'm very, very curious for both of you, but just in general, even for my own culture, the experience of queerness outside of a North American cultural context. Like, I don't know, like is it like to be like a queer femme in Jordan?
I have no idea.
Right? Like, I don't really know what that's like in Nigeria either. And on Instagram, I'm looking at all these queer Nigerians. I'm like, can I
Can
join?
I be your friend?
Can I know?
Yeah.
Because I only know it in this context of feeling subpar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because no one looks like me, even though I know statistically there are people that look like me. Where are they? What are they doing?
That's the same question I always ask myself. Like, where are they? Where are all the trans, non-binary, Asian, Pacific Islander? I don't usually meet that many, and when I do, it's usually it has to be like in a very special setting where it's like specifically like built for queer and trans, like Asian,
closed
Pacific
spaces.
Islander.
Yeah.
So it's yeah.
We need to build more.
Yeah.
Like that's.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started Queer. I was in Halifax. It's just like I looked around. I'm like, I want people that are me, like, you know, who have like similar experiences, like growing up, like who know like what it means to go down to like the supermarket just down the street and picking up like licorice for like super cheap, you know, like, you know, who grew up watching the same cartoons that I did, but like are also queer. Like I like felt like, you know, I don't know if both of you, I'm pretty sure you both have similar experiences. Like when you go meet somebody from like who's Middle Eastern or who's Nigerian or who's from like Vietnam, and it's just like immediately you're like, straight person.
Oh yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
I hide as many piercings as I can.
Yeah.
Just in case, you
Yeah,
know. And
yeah.
then if I'm like, oh, you're also queer. All right,
Okay, yeah.
we can be free. But yeah, I can suddenly. But otherwise, it's just like
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially like I feel like that was like that's the big problem with queer. I was like, folks are not comfortable coming out because like to our events or to our like meetings or whenever we have a hangout. It's because like, what if you know someone who knows somebody who will tell my parents like that I'm queer, and it's just like. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, and like for us, all of us, it's just like once I founded that group, it's just like meeting these people, and immediately you're like, oh, these people know what I'm going through. Yeah. It makes me cry. But yeah.
And I think even culturally, like their desire, you know, I know for Nigerians, I assume, right, like I've lived away from home since I was 17. I assume for Nigerians, it makes sense to desire me.
Yeah.
We all look the same. We don't look the same, but you know what I mean? Like it makes sense. Desire's understandable. I get it. Even when I go home, I know how to, I mean, here as well, I suppose I know how to pretend and wear the mask and be the desirable thing in some ways. I mean, there's only so much I can do. But yeah, so like just people who understand your culture, I feel like the desire and preferences are clearer. But here, it feels like there's just so many miscommunications or like things get lost in translation.
Yeah.
I want to ask another question. Is that
Yes,
okay?
absolutely.
I'm wondering if we could talk about the differences or your thoughts on the differences between personal preference, like just what you happen to be into versus what is told to us, what we learn is desirable. as dictated by racist, ableist, fatphobic, classist, transphobic ideas.
Not a heavy question, no.
Oof. Do
I had a thought. Well, I feel like, if you're desiring me for reasons that are like fetishizing, it's like, like come belly dance for me. Like,
No.
I've had that happen to me. It's like
No.
come belly dance for me and like talk dirty to me in Arabic. And I'm like, no, I will be stabbing you to death if that's the case. But like, that's fucked. Like, I'm not like some sort of genie in a bottle for you who are like, you need to come save me. Like, that's the fucked up one. Like,
Yeah.
desire me for like the person that I am, for like my ideas, for what I'm saying, for, what I bring to the table. Like, desire me for my cooking, actually. Come, like, that's what I want you, my partner.
Aw.
My partner loves it. So, or like, just for my own company, just like make me feel like I'm human. Yeah, like love me for all my faults is like what I want to say, yeah.
Okay.
I have my list.
I mean, I guess I'll just like try to answer it in my own way.
Yeah,
I think there is kind of like a gray area between, what is it, personal preferences and desirability, or I guess like the other sister term of it, like sexual racism, So
I've never heard that before.
I know. I discovered that like a few weeks ago.
I'm gonna have to Google that.
I don't want
Yes.
to.
Fear not. I'm here to explain that.
You're not, I've Googled it.
So, okay, so I think for me, personal preferences are stemming from like, my own, like my certain sexual or emotional urges and connections that I have to someone. So, with someone. And it's something that kind of like you innately carry, like it's inherent to you. And it's not, in my opinion, it shouldn't be something that's socially constructed. Like it shouldn't be like what society is telling you to desire for, I guess. But it's and like I guess I can use a good example of that is like I generally have an attraction for introverted folks on the Myers-Briggs like 16 personality side of things. I like to use Myers-Briggs because like it's kind of like scientifically proven, but yeah, like I tend to have attraction to introverted folks, and it has nothing to do with how society is telling me like who to be attracted to. But I think desirability and sexual racism, it's kind of like based on when the society kind of like puts a hierarchy, a ranking, I guess, to a certain race, a certain group of people, and say, you, hey, you worth the fuck, or you don't worth the fuck, and by doing that, it's problematic as now. It's now like, oh, if you don't worth a fuck, then you don't have a saying in a dating scene, in friendship, in anything, in relationship building. So, so it's problematic, and it's not something innate, but it's internalized often. So therefore, you start thinking, oh wow, like it looks like I have a preference for a certain type or certain race or certain people, right? But it's actually not really. Like you're just internalize all of that. And I guess a good example of that is I had a friend who came to me who was actually from Asian Pacific Islander community and told me that they don't want to fuck or date with any Asian Pacific Islander community members. And they said their reason is that it felt like, oh, I'm dating my own siblings. Yeah. So there's a lot of reason why somebody would be saying something like that. Like it could be like out of like, use like self-hating, or I guess like internalized racism. It could be like multiple different ways, or it could be just out of traumas. But I think that's a very good example of what like I guess like desirability and like sexual racism make you think. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that because I, thinking about this, realizing how much of the Kool-Aid I've been drinking, because even just thinking like everyone should be dateable and like sex, people who like to have sex, it's pleasurable, it's fun. Everyone should have a go. But I'm like, oh, no, you have to be, why?
Yeah.
That's not real. And then
Yeah.
unpacking my own desires, and I was having a conversation like a few years ago with a brown queer person, and we're talking about desire and like unpacking that, decolonizing it, using all sorts of words to kind of like how do I know what I really desire and what is internalized, right? And power is what came up, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I'm attracted to people I think are more powerful than me. So not black, thin, more masculine, money, not disabled. Like just all these awful things. I mean, just truly, I'm like, you need to have more power than me because we can't both be marginalized. But also, it's just internalized. I'm taught that this is beautiful and this is desirable. And so I don't want to be far from that. I'm always like looking to put myself in proximity to that, right? And it's a true like head fuck. Sorry, can we swear?
No, yeah.
No, I said that too.
But it really is, right? And it's been years. Like I had this conversation in like 2016 when I came out. But it's been years of trying to unlearn that, and it pops up in different. It just keeps popping up, and
Yeah.
because the world hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And like I'm trying to change in a world that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just like admit, like sometimes I felt like I couldn't date folks of color in my head, like back in the day, is because like, what if we break up and I lose that community?
That's real.
That like
yeah.
what if I don't have that contact with that community anymore? And it's like then I'm all alone.
Or being heartbroken by somebody that
Yeah.
you're like, you should know me
Yeah.
so much, and
Yeah.
the stakes are higher, but I think the payoff is also higher.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. I'm just very thankful for everyone in my life.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna add, like, my partner's white, and like the one thing that like made me love her so fucking much is like we were at the lake, and this like Middle Eastern like family were just leaving, and accidentally they took somebody's towels with them, and like these white people were in the water, and they were just yelling so many racist things.
Because it was how?
Because of like mistakenly took towels and they were bringing it back, and they just kept going on and on and on. And like my partner, I was like with one of my friends who's African Nova Scotian. We were just sitting there, and my partner just got up and like went down and just like shut it down. I was like, okay. My friend was like, don't say anything. We'll just watch this.
Yeah.
And like because she stood up to like racist assholes, and like I'm gonna be with you.
Well, yeah, because she knows her responsibility.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if she's going to love you,
Yeah.
that is her responsibility.
Yeah, and like she's done so much unlearning and learning, and just like she knows like,
Yeah.
oh,
That's so,
I was like, baby.
so wholesome.
Yeah.
No, but I think this is precisely why it gets complicated, right? Because I think as racialized people, as queer people, identity politics. I mean, Black feminist thinkers gave us the language of identity politics to understand our position in like powerful, oppressive societies, right? And so we're always like in conversation about this. We have these conversations. We use this language. We know what it means. We're like quick with it, and I think it's in a way that folks who are not necessarily in the arena or in the work or in the community might find alienating, or they're like, I don't know, it doesn't matter, race doesn't matter, why are you bringing up race? It doesn't. Unfortunately, like, it does. It does, as much as we don't want it to. We're not in a post-racial society. I don't think we ever will, or that we should be. It's okay that we're different. It's just equity is good, is what we're looking for. We just want equity is the ideal.
That's like my actual job.
Yeah. But in a way, so when it comes up in relationships, interpersonal dating, even just friendships, it can be, really sensitive, right? Because interpersonal relationships are already kind of sensitive. Your heart is on the table, whether or not you're dating. Friendship is very intimate, so it's already so sensitive. And then conversations about race, or, well, disability as well. You know, basically any identities that we have, it's extra sensitive, but is necessary, I think. Even if you are the same culture, I don't know. I was just thinking of that when you were talking about your partner, and like the fact that she has an understanding that you are not a white person and she's going to love you.
Yeah.
There's work.
Yeah.
Because the world is not a good place, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And like the world hasn't been kind to her either, because
Yeah.
like she's a fat person, like, you know, it's just like also like imperialist and like capitalist and like whatever, it just like impacts her.
Yeah.
So it's just like, how do I also like
Yeah.
unlearn things for you?
Yeah.
Like, you know, yeah. It's a two-way street, in my opinion.
I think so. I think that's like and anyway, that was my intention with like with I have, you know, even interrogating my own shit, but also keeping an eye open for in community, the people I'm interested in dating or being friends with or working with, where they're at with that, you know, because it's very painful to to like, it's just so painful because relationships already can be painful. The added work is, yeah, that was just a thought. Do you have anything else to say about question number 2?
No.
I think that's good.
Okay, so what have your experiences been like in terms of finding community, friendships, dating? I know you're in a relationship. I don't know if you're in
No, I'm not in a
Yeah,
relationship.
dating, work relationships, and how do you think it's been impacted by desirability politics?
I don't know about you, but like I'm often the only like person of color, the only queer person on like any workplace. Like currently I am one of 3 people of color. The 3 of us are immigrants, which is cool. But I'm the only queer person on a team of like 25. And it's just like, and conveniently, I'm like passionate about queer work and like, you know, queer mental health and stuff like that. But it's just like automatically like, you got to do all of this work for us. And like, but okay, I
Yeah.
guess. Like, I'm not the expert, but
Yeah.
I have expertise, but not the expert. But yeah, so like for me, and like even like when I had like previous jobs, I was pretty much the only person of color, or like, which is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I also ended up doing a lot of emotional labor, trying to explain things like racial tension, like any of those racial related issues. I ended up being the one who's always have to like, I guess like educate or even like bring awareness to folks. So it's, and I mean, I'm in a workplace where there are other BIPOC folks in there, but oftentimes other folks like don't have, I guess like don't have that like understanding enough to like wanted to explain these things, and then it always ended up like being a queer and trans person. I explain it. I'd have to like do extra emotional labor
Yeah.
to explain all of that. I think like in terms of building relationship, finding community, when you're talking about like affected by desirability politics, there are 2 things that I usually notice. The first thing is if folks notice this desirability politics, and they know that it's a problematic narratives around it, then we tend to bond easier. Like we have that like connections. We already understand the struggles, so it's easy for me to like open up and make friends, build connections with folks. But then there's the other end where you also experience a lot of folks that internalize a lot of these things, and they project it onto you or onto other folks that don't participate in this politics, right? And then you also have the situation where folks are being shamed for participating in desirability politics. Like, you know, like recently we have with the invention of OnlyFans and many other you know, like dating apps and like sugar baby, sugar daddy, sugar mommy dynamics. Folks that participating in those and capitalize on them, they tend to get shamed more. And I always think about it, like why are you shaming these folks when they're trying to make their ends meet? And like, I don't know how to say it, but basically, in my opinions, like, don't blame it on these folks that participating on them. Like they're just, I guess it's if you think about it, if they don't cause direct harm to you by participating in it and capitalizing on it, then you shouldn't I guess like you shouldn't tell them what to do or and judge them for having to do all these, like participating in them, because it's already hard enough being BIPOC, being in this, I guess like in this community. Oh my God, my headset keeps slipping the whole time. Sorry about that. And like it's already hard enough. Why are you shaming someone else for participating in them? Like, I get that like pretty privilege or like all these privileges are definitely intensified due to these dynamics, but it's actually the people that created this type of dynamics that should be blamed on. It's not like people that capitalize on, like people that capitalize or like folks that participating in them should not be like the one that get all the blames. Like of one or two people won't change the whole scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just made me think like, well, yeah, we have to survive. And we currently live in a capitalist world. Neoliberal economic policies basically rule the world. And so I have to work. I have multiple day jobs. I love them, but it's because I need money, right? So I have to survive. We have to adapt and assimilate in ways, even ways that are not right. We raised, when I was dieting all the time, it wasn't fun. Dieting isn't fun. I hate it.
Never fun.
But I was just like, I need to be thin because life is like the struggle bus is struggly enough. I can't also be fat, and it's terrible. It was a sickness. It's not something I believe. It's not something I want anyone to be like, but it's definitely where my head was at, when I first moved here and was trying to find community. And so that thing of shame, where we then shame each other for trying to survive or like even beyond surviving, trying to thrive. But I think it's a double bind, really, because unless we're toppling current systems, are we toppling them? Has the revolution started? Are we,
I'm
okay,
ready.
so we still gotta work.
Yeah, we still gotta
I still
make
have
the
to
paycheck.
eat.
And exist.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
like whatever you need to do to make your existence more in the face of like racism and ableism, like we're talking as three people who are able to leave our houses and come here and sit in these chairs, which is not, this whole spectrum. That's not to say we're not disabled. None of us here are disabled, but enough able-bodied enough to be here. There are people who can't, right? The people who don't get to see, who don't get to like be in community the way that we can be in community.
Yeah.
So whatever they can do to make their lives easier, whatever we can do to make our lives easier, but like whatever we can do to make each other's lives easier, basically is what I'm getting at. Like how can we just unburden each other?
Uplifting each other.
Yeah,
Like this is why I've been like all about like, oh, let's try to build solidarity, because like if we keep like having this shaming narrative, this whole jealousy and envy and all that stuff, folks that participating in that, like we're never gonna reach that like solidarity among BIPOC, people BIPOC in general.
I think it's scarcity, right? So like that's what we believe in, this idea of scarcity. So if we don't, whether or not we want to, this is what the world is showing us. So it's kind of hard.
It is hard. Yeah.
Is it okay to bring up like how like also the porn industry like impacts our desirability?
Yes.
As like like when you look at like the titles even like like it's just like super fucked and like like who's looking at like a lot of us didn't grow up getting like great sexual education, like, great
yeah.
healthier
Still
like.
don't know that. No one has given me the talk. I'm 31.
I can give you the talk later if you want.
Please, I don't.
My mom handed me a book, but like how like to like navigate like consent or like how you feel in your body or like even like being on TV on doing porn. Like porn is okay, like but like how are they treating you and how are you being portrayed? Also, like who's watching it and how are they absorbing this and then they're like spreading it out to everyone. So like I think like OnlyFans came out because of that, but like also look at who has like the highest fans. It's probably a white person.
Who's making the most money?
Yeah,
Like it
like
comes
and
down.
like and like compare that to like
And skinny.
like a black person.
Yeah.
They're not like same with RuPaul's Drag Race. Like I'm not gonna like because it's a show I watch, but like the white queens have a lot more fans and likes on Instagram, whereas the black ones don't. And every time it's like, why do you do that? And like when somebody brings up politics, they're like, why'd you bring up politics?
Well, everything is political.
Everything is political. Like, my
pretend.
body is political.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say our body is political. So whatever decision that they make about my body, it's going like we're gonna have to speak up. We're gonna have to bring in politics here.
Yeah. I think it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but whenever people say that to me, I want to say, but I don't. I hold my tongue a lot. You have to. But
Why do you have to though?
Oh.
Yeah.
Gotta,
Who's
still
moderating
gotta
who
work.
now?
It's true. Fair.
Yeah.
But people who are like, "Ugh, you make everything political." Like it's not. I'm like, that to me tells me your privilege. It tells me that the things I care about that impact you.
Yeah.
And that's intense. You know, it's like it doesn't have to impact you for you to care. That's a thing.
Yeah.
I don't have to be directly affected by something to care about it,
Yeah.
to be invested in things changing. But yeah, everything is political.
Yeah, like my life changed after 9/11 drastically.
Yes.
Yeah, so like I'm suddenly like, I had a racist roommate in my first year of university. And just like she blamed me for 9/11. I'm like, I'm 18. I'm not a mastermind, you fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Please fail university. She did.
Oh, karma.
It's like, here's a
Yeah.
mirror.
Karma.
Yeah. I like the conversation about porn though because it is true. It definitely informs lots of people's desires. And even intellectually we're adults, but imagine being 16 and being like, this is sex. Yeah, this is
exactly
what people are doing.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. This is how everyone keeps their body hair. This is what all people sound like when they're having sex,
Oh my.
So yeah, it does inform desire as well. There's so many options now for porn.
So easily accessible.
So easily accessible, and there's like queer porn, ethical porn, like porn with racialized people.
Yeah.
And I do I do try and watch my physiological reaction, like what turns me on, right? Is it what I know, what I've been seeing on TV since I was a child? Not porn, but romantic rom-coms.
Yeah.
The leading lady. Who's the leading lady? The best friend is always like a quirky black girl
It was just like,
with no personal life.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a cheerleader.
She's catering to the white girl.
Literally all the time. She's fat and funny.
Yeah.
Why? Or,
Yeah,
or the gay guy best friend who doesn't have his own personal life. We don't know anything about him. He's
Yeah.
just,
Or even like the fat person who's like, I'm just here to like make you look prettier.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the nerdy random Asian characters.
Every
Inevitably.
time.
Inevitably, yeah.
Or like, the era was like, hello.
Yeah.
I'm here to, seduce you. That's how you brush it. I'm sorry.
No, but like this is how we're programmed.
Yeah. I'm either a terrorist or a genie in the bottle. Like, yeah, pick one, please.
Yeah.
Here are your two options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how we're programmed down. Anyway, on that very light note, positive, what aspects of yourself do you find desirable?
You go first.
Okay, so I'll try my best. So I think this is a really good, but also a very difficult question for me to
It
answer.
is, yeah.
And to be honest, like I used to equivalent how desirable I am with my looks or where I'm at in my career or even my intelligence or like even my I guess like where I am like in terms of like social class struggle. So but looking back at it, I felt like these were pretty much like reinforced by like all of these races, lookist classes, like ableist, etc. All of these is stuff narratives, right? So it's definitely a long journey for me to try to like find like myself desirable in way without putting myself or I guess like other people like in this desirability politics. So I would not have an answer for this question if this had been like my 20-year-old thumb, like trying to explain this. But like I think I find myself like now that I am sort of like going through this delay adolescence phase in my 20s, I think I was able to sort of come up with a good answer for like when or I guess what aspect of myself that I feel desirable. I think I find myself when I pursue my career or when when I'm working hard for something, I find that very sexy about me. I find that very I personally think when I break down a certain piece of knowledge that I picked up from somewhere and I try to explain to folks, I find that very sexy of me to do that. I also have like a very I guess this is part of being an ENFJ, like on the 16 personality Myers-Briggs type. I have like more like an altruistic like type of like like protective attitude when I help folks in like trying to uplifting them in their life and all that stuff. So I think when I do that, I feel really sexy and I feel really desirable because I think that I'm happy, and when I'm happy, I am the best I can be, right? And what else? Oh yeah, I am also. This may be like a little bit more explicit on a more explicit side. I'm also kind of like a very sexual being. I'm really into like gender like femdom stuff. So I find myself when I'm exuding so much confidence with my partners, I find that very desirable with myself. Yeah, but that's like a few things that I think I'm starting to unpack a lot of those thinking and then and find that great about myself.
I love that.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to answer mine. It's like I've been thinking about it like all afternoon. It's just like, I mean, for me, it's like ways that disrupt like Eurocentric thinking. Like, I fucking love my hair. Like, I love every single curl of it. And like, it just like makes me feel like super powerful. And it's just like, people are like, I don't know, I feel like it scares people in a way. They're like, I love your hair, it's so great. But at the same time, they're like, I was like, don't touch it.
No.
Yeah.
You have no. Yeah. But I also love about me personally, like that I find desirable, that I'm kind of like, I can fake it till I make it, like, confidence wise. And I can be flirty when I want to be, when I want to get my way. But also like you, I love being like, I have like this dominant thing that's like, maybe it's like my airy side, but like my partner like digs it when I'm like, okay. I tell her in exact details what I want to do to her. And it'd be like, when we get home, I want you to do this, this, this.
Shy.
Wow.
And then she's like, oh, literally. Oh, sorry, baby. She immediately like, we'll go.
Well, that's very hot.
I like that.
Yeah, I find that very desirable of me.
I need to learn some from you.
Watch the porn. Okay. No, it's just, I also love dirty talking. It's just like I find that like super hot and fun and like flirty. I'm in my 30s and I'm flirty and I'm dirty.
30, flirty.
Yeah, and I also love. I find desire through cooking. Yeah, and just like making meals to the people I love.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could spend hours just cooking for my boo all day.
Yeah.
It's like, here, eat my creation.
Seduction.
Yeah, I love seduce. It's like my Venus is in Pisces, so, you know, I have this romantic flair to me. Yeah, I like wooing. I love that, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's yours?
Well, I love myself when I'm happy.
Yeah.
I just feel so free and really just like, I feel very big and open. And I just think that's so desirable. You know, and well, seduction, I love to seduce people. Even, I mean, I say seduction as a joke, but I like to be in service to people I care about, cooking, taking care. And see, this is the trouble with like sexism and misogyny. Because I'm a woman, I'm like, it's not because I'm a woman I like it. It's because
Yeah.
I'm a Pisces. That's why I like it. Not for gender reasons, but I do. I love to. But I also love to receive that, you know, like attention and care. But yeah, when I'm happy, I think is when I feel. I just love that in myself. I feel so desirable.
Yeah. I love it when I'm silly. Like I'm
Yeah,
feeling
when you can be
goofy.
playful.
Yeah. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just be comfortable with yourself. I think
Yeah.
that's when I feel the most like the sexiest about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like awkward, so I love like I know it's weird like saying this, but like I love being awkward around people and just like make people laugh because of my awkwardness, and it makes me feel really great.
Yeah.
I love to hear these things that you love about yourself. I'm really grateful for this conversation. I was really nervous because, you know, it's loaded. Like we said, everything's political. We can't talk about desire and not talk about race and fatphobia and ableism. And, you know, we can't, it just would not be a complete conversation. So thank you for being vulnerable. We're both really vulnerable. I appreciate.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else you want to say?
It's a journey. This
Yeah.
is like such a fucking journey. It's just like I can't believe it. Like I'm like still in therapy. Like not like I'm still in therapy, but like I'm forever gonna be in therapy. But like just like unlearning all of the stuff that's like I've built
Yeah.
and like was built around me by force. And it's
Yeah.
just like I'm just very thankful. Like when I turned 30, I just like had this aha moment, and it's like I don't need these people in my life. Like I don't need these people and their expectations in my life.
Yeah.
And like friend breakup is real. And it's
Some of the most painful breakups are friend breakups.
yeah, and like and I've like actually been the one to be like, you know what, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And it's okay. And it's like I literally a few weeks ago stopped feeling guilty about it. Like 7 years in, and it's just
Good.
like, yeah, and just like go to therapy, people.
Yeah.
Yeah, find a good therapist.
Yeah, I think the most difficult part about my journey in general is not to internalize what other folks telling me, like their insecurity projected onto me, because I tend to get affected and influenced by what other folks telling me, like how I should be, or I guess like now that I came out as non-binary, I had really weird conversation with, like weird and fun conversation with some non-binary folks telling me that like, oh, like androgyny is so overrated and that you don't need to follow this concept of androgyny and stop like internalize all of this stuff. And yeah, like just not internalizing them and understanding that like, oh, it's not my fault that this happened to me. Like it's not my fault that that I was born this way, or I am Vietnamese, I am, you know, Asian Pacific Islander. Like this, like it's not your fault to begin with. So therefore, don't stop internalizing folks.
Honestly, I'm going to say something embarrassing because I think everyone maybe knew this before, but I kind of had a breakthrough about what it means to take things personally, and it's to internalize what people say and what they say they believe about you and believe that about yourself. And I found this out maybe 2 months ago, maybe less, and I was like, 31 years. I've been doing that for 31 years. I've been like, I guess I must suck and be ugly and weird, you know? I guess that's why I don't, but really it's like, no, actually every look, every body, every way of being is really wonderful, not in a kumbaya way, but in a like, we are animals, and like diversity and variety is really why we exist. Like the world is, it happens in fish and plants and fungus and mushroom, like why we're just animals. It's okay that we're different. It's
100%.
good.
And we're different for a certain reason. It's just, I mean, I'm gonna use my science side talking.
Please
here.
do, because that's my favorite.
It's like, you got evolution acting as a force, telling people to adapt to a certain lifestyle. So obviously, people are gonna look a certain way, to pursue a certain lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
It just happened that now folks are more likely to meet each other and come together, and there's more intercultural, interracial exchange and all that stuff. So it has nothing to do, like your difference is not any like weird or I guess like frowned upon than anyone else's difference. So yeah, I think
It's just this hierarchy you talked about when there's value and when there's like financial capitalist value placed on a hierarchy of human beings and different qualities of human beings, that's where we get like prejudice and racism, and that's what's fucked up. Existing differently is literally biology, as the biologist has told us. But
Thank you.
I think we might be out of time. I'm just so grateful. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This was amazing. I could talk here forever.
Yeah, this is a fun conversation. Thank you.